Welcome back. Throughout this section of EC2, we have been starting, stopping, restarting or launching and terminating instances many times so far. But there are some key facts about the instance lifecycle that you should understand very well. An Amazon EC2 instance goes through different states from the moment you launch it to its termination. So, let's take a look at this. First of all, we have our AMI and we launch our instance from it. Now, you've noticed that when it does that, it goes into what's called a pending state. From pending, it should go to a running state if everything works correctly. From a running state, we have a couple of options. We can reboot our instance, in which case it enters a restart state, and then it should go back to the running state in a few minutes. We could terminate our instance, and that means that the instance enters the shutting down state, and then it terminates. We could stop our instance, or we could stop and hibernate our instance, and these are a couple of options that we'll talk about in a moment. So, if you stop or hibernate your instance, it enters a stopping state, and then it enters a stopped state. Note that stopping and hibernating instances only applies to EBS-backed instances. If your instance uses instance store volumes, you cannot stop or hibernate the instance. Now, from a stopped state, you can also terminate the instance if you wish, and you can never start it again. Or, you can start it and then it will go back to the pending state, and then eventually it will go back to the running state. So, these are the various states and operations you can perform on your EC2 instances. Now, let's take a look at some key facts. EC2 instance standstill applies only to EBS-backed instances. There is no charge for the stopped instance. That is, the instance, once stopped, incurs no usage charges or day transfer fees, but there is a charge for storing any attached Amazon EBS volume. The data in the RAM is actually lost when you stop the instance. Also, usually the instance is migrated to a different host, so it's a good way to be able to move your instance between hosts if needed for some reason. For example, you may know that some scheduled hardware maintenance is happening on a host that your instance is running on. In that case, if you stop and restart it, you will know that it will be on a different host. When you stop your instances, private IP addresses are retained and public IP addresses are released. All associated elastic IP addresses are also retained. Then we have hibernation. Now, this applies to Linux and Windows on-demand or reserved instances. Previously, it was only possible for Linux, but AWS has already expanded that support for Windows instances. So hibernation gives you the convenience of pausing and resuming instances, saves you time by reducing application startup time, and saves the effort of having to set up the environment or applications again from scratch. Instead of having to recreate the amount of memory, hibernation allows applications to pick up exactly where they left off. With hibernation, the RAM contents are saved to an EBS volume. So, this means that you can return your instance to the state it was in, including the information that was in the RAM when you need it, so you can resume everything as it was before. The instance must be enabled for hibernation when it is started, and specific prerequisites apply. So, when you start your instance after hibernating, the root volume is restored to its previous state. The RAM contents are reloaded back into memory, and the processes that were previously running on the instance are resumed. You will also find that all previously attached data volumes are reattached and the instance retains its instance ID. Then we have the restart of the instances. Restarting an instance is equivalent to restarting the operating system. The instance is still on the same host machine and retains its public DNS name, private IP address, and all the data in its instance store volumes. Typically, the reboot takes several minutes to complete, but the actual time will depend on the instance configuration. It also does not affect billing. That is, you are still billed for the instance as such. Now, instances, too, can be taken down, and this can happen for a couple of reasons. One is that AWS detects an irreparable failure of the underlying hardware on which the instance is running, or the instance reaches its scheduled retirement date, and, in that case, is stopped or terminated by AWS. Now, what about terminating EC2 instances? Basically, it is about deleting the instance. You cannot recover terminated instance. It's gone. By default, Amazon EBS root volumes are automatically deleted when the instance is terminated. However, by default, additional EBS volumes that you attach at launch, or any EBS volumes that you attach to an existing instance, are kept even after the instance is terminated. And this setting can be changed for both the root volume and any additional volumes you add. Then we have EC2 Instance Recovery. Here, you can create an Amazon CloudWatch alarm that monitors an Amazon EC2 instance and automatically recovers the instance if it stops working due to an underlying hardware error or an issue that requires AWS intervention in repair. Basically, these are the system health checks. Remember, that's when AWS needs to do something to help recover your instance. If the instance is recovered, it should be identical to the original instance. So, with that, we end this important class on the life cycle of EC2 instances. Until next time.